Welcome back to Day 16, where Judge Bev is practically begging to let the jurors in, while the defense team is busy uncovering a fresh set of impounded receipts that Jen McCabe apparently forgot to mention. We're kicking things off with a high-stakes clerical scavenger hunt, as Alan Jackson reveals a dozen mystery phone calls that have been sitting in the court's vault like a digital time bomb. While the judge draws a hard line at the use of neon highlighters, because heaven forbid the evidence be easy to read, the defense is sending its team on a sprint to the copy machines to weaponize these new findings. It's a day of trust but verify and digital Cliff's Notes, as the prosecution tries to sanitize the Higgins-Reed flirtation while the defense prepares to turn easy into a four-letter word during a marathon cross-examination. Welcome in, everybody. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You know, all the YouTubey things. Forget what you think you know about justice. Welcome to the virtual juror, where snark is reality, but evidence is royalty. Where at first we look at the FACS, or facts and conjecture shared, before we get into the real stuff. We immediately start the day with Sidebar 135, because it wouldn't be a welcome to Bev's court without one. Alan Jackson revealed that the court has been sitting on some impounded phone records that the defense had never seen. These records supposedly contain a dozen or so phone calls that Jen McCabe likely won't know about until they're shoved in her face. It's always fun when the defense finds a new set of receipts that the star witness hasn't had time to study. In a moment of pure academic frustration, Jackson asked if he could highlight the important bits to make his point. Judge Bev shut down the highlighter dream immediately. Apparently, we can have an elimination trial with secret phone extractions, but neon yellow ink is where we draw the line. Since the original records were court property, the judge authorized Elizabeth Little to make a break for the copy machine while Jackson distracted the witness. Little was given a hall pass to abandon the defense table to make a quick duplicate of Exhibit 00, provided she returned the sacred originals to the clerk immediately. Jackson has a new weapon in his arsenal, 12 mystery phone calls that weren't in the previous reports. He's ready to play Whose Number Is This? Yet again, while the judge is trying to make sure her paperwork stays in the right pile. The records are unimpounded. The copies are warm from the copy machine, and the highlighters are back in their drawer. Seriously, how do you get to a trial and uncover a discovery the defense hasn't seen yet? Oh wait, I forgot where we are for a second. Massachusetts. After a long night of county playing HVAC hero to ensure the courtroom doesn't turn into a literal sweatbox, Judge Bev kicked things off by confirming that everyone is finally comfortable, or at least as comfortable as one can be while watching a digital train wreck. She then ran through her daily "Are you behaving?" checklist, receiving the usual choir of nods from the jury that remains impressively committed to the pinky promise of not Googling why a 2:27 a.m. search is trending. With the pleasantries out of the way and the air conditioning humming, she summoned Jennifer McCabe back to the stand, nearly slipping up and calling for Miss Reed before correcting herself. Because in this trial, even the judge is having trouble keeping the protagonist and the witness straight. And Commonwealth Witness 39, Jennifer McCabe, is back. But before we can get to the digital destruction of the century, Alan Jackson had to deal with the courtroom equivalent of forgetting to take out the trash. Apparently, in the peppy whirlwind of yesterday's cross-examination, he forgot to officially move the group chats into evidence. Jackson approached the stand with the grace of a man who knows he's missed a spot. He showed Jen McCabe the group chats, those lovely digital huddles where the Canton inner circle ostensibly compared notes, and asked if she recognized them. Jen, now an expert in identifying things that make her look suspicious, agreed they were the same ones. Jackson, ever the humble professional, took the hit for the delay, admitting it was his fault for not marking them yesterday. Lally, perhaps still dazed from the butt dial math, offered zero objection. The document was officially christened Exhibit 98. It's the paper trail of the group's coordination, and Jackson wanted to make sure it was locked and loaded before moving on to bigger fish. Judge Bev, however, wasn't just going to let the paperwork slide by. She noticed something about the form, or the length, that didn't quite sit right with her copy, leading to a curious sidebar. She hauled the lawyers over to make sure Jackson's version of the Canton gossip logs matched her own. In a trial where every second of digital data is being treated like a state secret, Bev wanted to ensure everyone was literally on the same page. The group chats are officially in the record. Jackson has apologized for his clerical sins, and Judge Bev is personally auditing the exhibits. We've cleared the housekeeping hurdle, and the stage is set for more digital revelations. Just as Exhibit 98 was about to be officially crowned, Lally had a sudden moment of objection FOMO. He scurried to Sidebar 136 to make sure everyone knew that while he wasn't objecting now, he definitely didn't want to waive the right to complain about all the things he objected to yesterday. Lally clarified that his no objection was more of a no objection, but also I remember I hated this yesterday. It's the legal version of saying, I'll let you buy the house, but I'm still going to complain about the wallpaper every time I visit. Judge Bev, ever the digital auditor, noticed that Jackson was trying to dump the entire chat log into evidence, even though he'd only highlighted a few choice nuggets of suspicion. Jackson basically told the court that while some of the chats are quite frankly sort of irrelevant, he wants the jury to see the whole mess anyway. He's betting that even the boring parts help paint the picture of a group that was a little too coordinated for comfort. To wrap things up, the judge decided she needed to hit the reset button on the jury's brains, with a quick reminder of the digital evidence instruction. Everyone agreed that if the group chats are coming in, they're coming in warts and all, even the parts about umbrellas and raining men. The Canton gossip logs are officially moving in, and Lally is satisfied as long as his previous grievances remain on the record. Jackson is ready to let the jury sift through the digital haystack, confident they'll find the needles he spent all of yesterday pointing at. Just when you thought the butt dial was the peak of comedy, Alan Jackson returned to the podium to prove that Jennifer McCabe isn't just a digital gymnast. She's also a creative writer when it comes to police reports. Jackson dragged Jen back to January 29th, specifically the moment she requested a private audience with her buddy, Sergeant Michael Lank. Jen claimed she told Lank that Karen was screaming, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," like some sort of bad remix. Jackson produced the reality of Lank's actual report, written just hours after the body was found. According to the ink on the page, Jen told the officer that Karen said, "I hope I didn't hit him." When Jackson pointed out that "I hit him" and "I hope I didn't hit him" are two very different sentences, Jen's excuse was that the report was just very brief. Apparently, those two extra words, "I hope," were just a clerical error in the middle of an elimination investigation. The cross-examination then took a hard turn into ethics, never heard of her territory. Jackson revealed that in September 2023, Jen McCabe decided to pay a personal visit to the home of Michael Proctor. You know, the lead investigator on the case, where she is a star witness. Jen launched into a tearful narrative about being viciously terrorized by bloggers and social media. The witch hunt. She claimed she only went to see Proctor's wife Elizabeth to bond over their shared torture, like some deranged mother support group. Coincidentally, Jackson noted that Jen seems to have a habit of visiting investigators' homes and only ever finding their wives. First Lank, and now Proctor. It's a very specific, very convenient social circle. Jackson then produced the phone records he had unimpounded earlier, showing that Jen and Trooper Proctor weren't just investigator and witness, they were practically pen pals. In the 3 days following John's death, Jen and Proctor racked up over 35 minutes of talk time, including a casual 21-minute chat on January 30th. Go ahead, Jen. Deny that call log. I dare you. Shockingly, Jen couldn't remember the number of calls without the records, but once the paper was in her hand, she had to admit they happened. Jackson is clearly building a case that the investigation was actually a series of friendly huddles between neighbors, who were all very invested in a specific outcome. Jen McCabe's testimony is currently on a collision course between what she says now and what the police wrote then. Jackson has exposed a massive discrepancy in Karen's alleged confession, and highlighted a relationship with the lead investigator that is cozy enough to make a conflict of interest lawyer faint. Just as the Proctor-McCabe Hotline was getting interesting, the trial hit a speed bump and Sidebar 137 in the form of a clerical Bermuda Triangle. Alan Jackson realized that the full panoply of calls he was promised had been pruned down to a mere 3-day snippet. Jackson pointed out that the records provided only up to February 1st, leaving the next several months of Jen and Proctor's digital friendship a complete mystery. Apparently, the defense had to send an associate to the court file like a medieval monk to scribe notes by hand, because the court wouldn't let them have the actual documents. Those notes show calls stretching all the way through March, calls that now have mysteriously vanished from the official pile. When Judge Bev asked the clerk, Jim, to go find the rest of the records, Jim's response was essentially a cry for help. Jim reminded everyone that there are about 700 impounded stuff sitting in the back, and he was fairly certain he'd already handed over everything he had. Sounds like a personal problem to a professional issue, Jim. Lally chimed in to say he thought the one batch was the only batch, leading Jackson to the obvious conclusion: the records have been misplaced. In a trial with this many lost items, what's a few dozen more phone calls between friends? Not wanting to bog down the cross-examination any further, because God forbid we interrupt the momentum of a trial that's already moving at the speed of tectonic plates, Jackson decided to forge ahead without the physical receipts. Jackson compromised. He will just ask Jen if she remembers the calls. Given her track record, the betting odds on an I don't recall are currently 1-1. Meanwhile, Jim, the clerk, has been sent on a quest into the basement to see if the missing months are buried under the other 699 pieces of impounded drama. The defense knows the calls exist. The prosecution is playing dumb, and the court's filing system is a black hole. Jackson is waiting to wing it, hoping that the mere mention of calls through March is enough to make Jen sweat, while the clerk plays Indiana Jones in the records department. Alan Jackson returned to the podium and just delivered a cross-examination finale that makes the butt dial theory look like a quaint clerical error for beginners. He spent the last hour proving Jennifer McCabe isn't just a state witness. She's a digital illusionist whose sleight of hand is finally being dismantled by the very data she tried to bury in a shallow digital grave. Jackson caught Jen in a massive contradiction regarding her totally casual relationship with lead investigator Michael Proctor. In a formal interview with Trooper Tully, Jen allegedly pulled a new phone who dis, claiming she never met Michael or Elizabeth Proctor before September 2023. Unfortunately for her, reality intervened. Jen had to admit on the stand that Proctor was actually the man who spent an hour interviewing her in her own dining room on January 29th, 2022, while Brian Albert loitered nearby. When Jackson asked if Trooper Tully simply hallucinated his report, Jen's only move was to insist she'd never lie because her meeting Proctor was everywhere. It seems the Canton Inner Circle is struggling to keep their We're Practically Strangers fanfiction synchronized. Jackson then interrogated Jen's 2 a.m. hobbies after returning from 34 Fairview. Jen admitted she was wide awake and Googling Ozone basketball, because naturally in the dead of a blizzard, while your friend is missing, you just have to research youth sports demographics. Jackson set a damning stage. Jen was awake, she was on safari, and she was in a very specific investigative Googling mood. Then came the holy grail of incriminating data. Exhibit 99. Jen tried to play the shaking hands and screaming Karen card to explain her digital footprint, but Jackson forced her to confront the legendary search. House long to die in cold. The timestamps are a total nightmare for the prosecution. A 2:27 a.m. search that was conveniently deleted, followed by a 6:23 a.m. search and a 6:24 a.m. search that were left for the world to see. Jackson's narrative was devastatingly simple. Jen checked the expiration timeline for a human popsicle at 2:27 a.m., while John was actually dying on the lawn. Realizing later that pre-calculating a death timeline is a bad look, she tried to overwrite the history by searching it again in front of witnesses at 6 a.m., then nuked the original 2:27 a.m. evidence to cover her tracks. When confronted with the fact that the 2:27 a.m. search was the only one marked deleted, Jen fell back on the "I'm just a tech-challenged suburban mom" defense, claiming she didn't even know how to find the trash can on an iPhone. Jackson didn't let her hide behind the shock of the morning. He pinned her to the forensic reality that the search exists. It happened hours before the body was found, and it didn't delete itself. Jackson just sat down after proving Jen McCabe was Googling the mechanics of hypothermia while her beloved friend was still alive and freezing. The butt dial was a mere warm-up. The 2:27 a.m. deleted search is a 5-alarm fire. Jen's parting words about loving John rang exceptionally hollow against a forensic report that suggests she was checking his warranty before 3 a.m. Jackson is done. Mike has hit the floor, and Lally is starting to look at Exhibit 99 like it's a cursed artifact that just ended his career. After Alan Jackson spent the morning treating Jennifer McCabe like a high-level cybercriminal, Adam Lally stepped up for a redirect that was essentially a digital rescue mission. His goal? To prove Jen is far too tech illiterate to be the mastermind the defense claims she is. Lally started by trying to neutralize the Ryan Nagel truck situation. He walked Jen through a series of I don't knows. She didn't know Ryan Nagel, she didn't know his truck, she didn't know his friend Ricky, and she certainly didn't know what they were doing outside. According to Lally's questioning, Jen was essentially a passive observer, who saw lights, but couldn't be bothered to notice a Ford F-150 idling near the driveway. It's the "if I didn't acknowledge the truck wasn't there" strategy. Lally pivoted to why Jen didn't see John O'Keefe's body on the lawn during her frequent glances out the storm door. He emphasized that it was dark, snowy, and the body was in a dark area in the corner of the lot. Lally's argument is that Jen wasn't expecting to see a body, so she didn't. He even pulled a courtroom versus crime scene comparison, noting that the lighting in the courtroom is much better than a blizzard at 1 a.m. A stunning revelation for everyone involved. This is the big one. Lally tried to provide a non-incriminating explanation for the deleted 2:27 a.m. Google search. Jen explained that while she was awake at 2 a.m., she wasn't just researching Ozone basketball. She was also reading a recap of an exciting basketball game on Hockomock Sports. Jen claimed she always leaves her Safari tabs open, to the chagrin of her battery-conscious children. Lally's theory is that when she finally searched the hypothermia at 6:23 a.m. at Karen's screaming request, she simply used an old tab that had been sitting open since 2:27 a.m. Lally is banking on the jury believing that a timestamp on a forensic report is just a clerical misunderstanding caused by a busy mom who doesn't know how to X out a browser window. For the drive home tech-illiterate angle, Lally asked Jen a series of questions about her forensic knowledge. Did she know what a wall file was? No. An SQLite database? No. A knowledge profile C? Absolutely not. Finally, Lally reminded the jury that Jen isn't a forensic expert. She's a former 5th grade teacher. Lally is trying to paint Jen as a simple, basketball-loving mom who is being bullied by a mean lawyer and some scary-sounding digital files. He's betting that the jury will find "I forgot to close my tabs" more believable than "I pre-searched the time of death." Lally tried one last-ditch effort to wrap Jennifer McCabe in a cozy cardigan of innocence, but Alan Jackson wasn't about to let the Canton cyber specialist hide behind a box of No. 2 pencils, which led to Sidebar 138. In a pedagogical pivot, Lally attempted to dive deep into Jen's resume, specifically her tenure as a 5th grade teacher. The goal? To prove that because she spent her days explaining long division to 10-year-olds, she couldn't possibly understand the dark arts of a Celebrate report or the delete button on an iPhone. Lally argued that her professional background was proof of her digital illiteracy. Basically, she teaches fractions, not forensics, Your Honor. Jackson, seeing right through the apple on the desk aesthetic, shut it down with a relevance objection that could be heard in the next county. Jackson called it exactly what it was: a blatant attempt to humanize her, and transform the woman with the suspiciously timed Google searches into a sweet, harmless elementary school teacher. He wasn't buying the Mrs. Higgins act for a second. Judge Bev, for once, seemed to agree that the Teacher of the Year narrative was a bridge too far. She told Lally he could try to prove Jen is tech-challenged in other ways, but her history with the 5th grade was officially dismissed from the classroom. Lally's attempt to use teacher vibes as a forensic shield failed. Jen might have taught children, but the court ruled that her career history doesn't erase her 227 digital activity. Adam Lally continued his attempt to patch the massive holes Alan Jackson just ripped in the prosecution's star witness. The goal of this round? Convince the jury that Karen Reed is a shape-shifting storyteller, and that Jen's own inconsistencies are just chaos in action. Lally walked Jen through the evolution of Karen's supposedly shifting narrative on the morning of January 29th. In the first version, they fought. She left him at the waterfall, and he never came home. In the pivot, once Jen pointed out she saw the SUV at the house, Jen claims the story changed to "I don't even remember going there." According to Jen, Karen was a one-woman rumor mill, telling people John was dead or that a plow hit him before the body was even cold. It's a convenient way to explain away Jen's own "house long to die" search. Basically, I only searched it because Karen was throwing out every death scenario except a meteor strike. Lally spent a considerable amount of time playing detective with the voicemail recording played during cross-examination. Since Jen could be heard in the background talking to 911, Lally wanted to make sure everyone knew it wasn't her phone doing the recording. If it wasn't Jen's phone, and it wasn't Kerry Roberts' phone, Lally wants the jury to assume it was Karen's phone. He's trying to suggest that Karen was recording or making calls from the car while Jen was out in the snow being the hero with the 911 operator. It's a classic misdirection play. Don't look at the deleted searches on my witness's phone. Look at the mysterious recording on the defendant's. Lally asked why Jen was at the rear of Kerry's vehicle during the 911 call. Jen's answer? She was just trying to get some peace and quiet. She was either grabbing some towels or trying to escape Karen's hysterical screaming, so she could talk to the operator. It paints a picture of Jen as the calm, rational center of a storm of Karen's induced madness. Finally, Lally tried to explain why Jen had Sergeant Michael Lank's personal cell phone number, and why she invited him over for a morning chat. Jen claimed she got the number from Julie Albert because Julie was the only one who had it. I guess the Alberts don't share their favorite police contacts in the family group chat. Lally revisited the "I hit him" versus "did I hit him" debacle. He tried to argue that Karen said both, and that Jen's testimony isn't contradictory, it's just comprehensive. Lally is doing his best to turn Jen McCabe from a suspicious actor into a victim of Karen Reed's erratic behavior. He wants the jury to believe that any confusion in Jen's story is simply a reflection of the chaotic morning. However, Jackson isn't letting him off the hook, as another sidebar was called the moment Lally tried to use Jen's 2023 testimony to bolster her current claims. The lawyers are huddling again, and the "I hit him" count is officially rising. Just as Lally tried to use the 2023 greatest hits album of Jennifer's testimony to fix her 2022 digital disaster, Alan Jackson threw a hearsay flag that sent everyone back to the huddle, Sidebar 139, for some legal hair splitting and a casual side-eye from the bench. Lally wanted to rehabilitate Jen by showing she's been telling the same story since June 2023. Jackson pushed back, pointing out the obvious flaw in Lally's logic. A prior consistent statement generally needs to happen before you start lying, not a year and a half into the cover-up. You can't fix a 2022 oopsie by pointing out a 2023 rehearsal. Jackson essentially told the court that Lally doesn't get to use Jen's later scripts to validate her earlier ones, especially when those earlier ones are currently being shredded by forensic data. The highlight of the sidebar came when the lawyers started debating whether Jackson had accused Jen of never saying "I hit him" before Friday. Lally claimed Jackson told the jury Jen never said it anywhere under oath, to which Jackson replied that doing so would be malpractice. Judge Bev couldn't resist a quick jab, dryly reminding Jackson that while malpractice is one thing, being unethical is a much bigger fish to fry. It was a classic Bev moment, policing the lawyers' vocabulary while the witness' credibility is on life support. Lally eventually pointed the judge toward page 816 of the federal grand jury testimony, because I guess Jen has testified in so many different venues that they need a Dewey Decimal System just to keep track of her versions of the truth. Lally is desperate to find a version of Jennifer McCabe that remains consistent, even if he has to fast forward the clock to 2023 to find it. Jackson is holding the line on the rules of evidence, and Judge Bev is busy distinguishing between bad at your job and bad for the soul. When the legal jargon was reaching a fever pitch, Judge Bev realized she was dangerously close to boring the jury into a coma. Instead of a proper break, however, she offered the courtroom equivalent of a consolation prize, the stand and stretch. She practically begged the jurors to stay put, promising that the legal huddle at the sidebar would only take a minute, a unit of time that in this trial usually equates to about 3 more rotations of the earth. It was a classic Bev move, keeping the jury tethered to their seats, like restless passengers on a grounded flight, while the lawyers argued over whether Jen's 2023 fanfiction was admissible. She's desperate to keep the momentum going, or at least maintain the illusion of progress, before the end of the day whistle inevitably blows. The jury is currently standing like awkward extras in a courtroom drama while the sidebar continues. While the jury was mid-stretch, the sidebar, officially 140 on the record, evolved into a high-stakes game of "Trust me, I'm a lawyer." Lally finally pointed to the golden nugget at the bottom of the page, and Judge Bev decided that, in the interest of finally getting this show on the road, she'd let the testimony in, even if its legal foundation was a bit shaky. Bev gave Lally the green light to proceed, but with a massive catch. It's subject to strike. Basically, she's letting the jury hear it now, but if Jackson can prove later that Lally is playing fast and loose with the rules of prior consistent statements, she'll just tell the jury to forget what they heard. Because, as we all know, telling a jury to unhear a witness's testimony is as easily as ungoogling "House long to die in the cold." Jackson, ever the gentleman, took the ruling with a shrug. He's clearly confident that Jen's 2023 rehabilitation tour won't survive a fact check. Meanwhile, Bev is promising to strike it however Jackson wants, which is the judicial equivalent of saying, "I'll let him say it, but I've got the eraser ready." Lally wrapped up his direct by attempting to frame Jennifer McCabe as a victim of both a screaming defendant and a digital witch hunt. He spent the final hour trying to convince the jury that Jen's phone isn't a crime scene. It's just a digital junk drawer. Lally successfully hauled in Jen's June 2023 federal grand jury testimony to rehabilitate her. Jen was finally allowed to say that she told the feds Karen looked her dead in the eye and said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Jen claimed Karen provided a buffet of options that morning. Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead? I have a cracked taillight. According to Jen, Karen was just auditioning every possible incriminating phrase until one stuck. In a move that probably did not win over the gallery, Lally asked Jen why a specific conversation with Kerry Roberts was so memorable that it stayed with her for 2 years. She claimed she was horrified when Kerry Roberts allegedly told her that John O'Keefe really loved Amy, his ex, and that Karen was just a babysitter with benefits. It's a classic Canton maneuver. When in doubt, pivot to character assassination. Lally used this to explain why Jen and Kerry did not coordinate their stories. They were just too busy gossiping about the victim's love life while his body was barely cold. Lally then returned to the 2:27 versus 6:23 a.m. Google search debate. with a physical explanation for the typos. Jen explained that her hands were completely numb from the cold, and that she has a redacted medical condition we all know is MS, which makes her prone to errors. She insists she only Googled how long to die in cold because Karen was physically shaking and screaming. The other typo was how long TI die in CIKD. They argued that these weren't evidence of a panicked 2 a.m. cover-up. They were just the result of cold fingers and a vibrating defendant. Lally gave Jen a platform to air her grievances about the harassment she's faced from the Free Karen Read movement. Jen described a life of daily, sometimes hourly, torture, involving hate mail, rolling rallies at her home, and people telling her to kill herself. She even claimed people are harassing her children at sporting events. She explained that her calls with Trooper Proctor weren't about collusion. They were about him warning her about protesters and setting up poll cameras to catch the ruckus outside her house. She's not a co-conspirator. She's just a woman who needs the lead investigator to help her with her home security. Lally's redirect was a masterclass in distraction and deflection. He painted Karen Reed as a hysterical, unloved babysitter, and Jen as a traumatized mother who just happens to be bad at typing and closing her Safari tags. He even managed to blame the butt dials and Proctor calls on a social media witch hunt. Lally is finally done. The babysitter comment is hanging in the air like a bad smell, and Jackson is back at the podium for a very brief recross. Alan Jackson returned to the podium for a brief but surgical recross, essentially taking a flamethrower to the humanization project Lally just attempted. By the time he was done, the horrified schoolteacher persona was replaced with a witness who seemingly treats a friend's death like a group chat gossip session. Jackson pointed out the statistical impossibility of Jen's new favorite phrase. Jen gave statements to Sergeant Lank, Trooper Proctor, and Trooper Prince, and testified 12 times in April 2022. Not once in any of those reports or testimonies did the words "I hit him" appear. Jackson noted that it took until 2023, June in fact, right when the public started asking about her 2:27 a.m. Google search, for Jen to remember the most incriminating confession in legal history. It's a miracle of memory that suspiciously coincides with Jen needing to point the fingers elsewhere. Jackson circled back to the data, specifically the communications Jen nuked before handing her phone to the police. Jen admitted she deleted all conversations with her 4 daughters, including Allie McCabe. Jen claimed she had no idea Allie would be a witness, or that Allie was the one who allegedly drove Colin Albert home. Jackson didn't let the "I'm just protecting my kid's privacy" excuse fly, framing the deletions as an intentional purge of communications with another key player in the Fairview timeline. This was the knockout blow. Lally tried to make Jen look empathetic by having her recount how horrified she was by Kerry Roberts' "babysitter with benefits" comment. Jackson pulled up the group text from that morning. When Matt McCabe texted Kerry could write a book about the morning's events, Jen didn't respond with "I'm horrified." She responded with "I love it." Within seconds of saying she loved the drama, she texted, "She's telling them everything." Jackson successfully painted a picture of Jen not as a grieving friend, but as a ringside spectator enjoying the chaos and monitoring the information leak. Jackson ended on a point of pure logic. Jen admitted to Lally that if Karen hadn't jumped out of the car, she wouldn't have even stopped at 34 Fairview. Jen's whole premise is that she was there to help search for John. However, Jackson pinned her down. If the whole point of the trip was to find John, why was she planning on driving right past him? Jen McCabe's marathon testimony ended not with a whimper, but with a snarky, "Oh my goodness," from Jackson. He left the jury with a witness who deletes texts with witnesses. loves the gossip surrounding her friend's death, and only remembered a confession 18 months after the fact. While the jury was off stretching their legs, the legal teams held a marathon huddle at Sidebar, number 141, that felt less like a sidebar and more like a post-game grievance session. The defense is officially tired of the prosecution's surprise tactics, and Judge Bev is busy making sure the record is tidy for the inevitable appeal. Jackson and Yannetti are visibly steamed that their perfect impeachment of Jennifer McCabe was ruined because they had to give Lally their homework in advance. Jackson revealed that the defense did a deep dive into GPS coordinates to discover Jen's secret meeting at the Lanks house. It was supposed to be a gotcha moment, but because of a discovery order, Lally saw it coming and gave Jen a prep session to polish her excuses. Jackson lamented losing his pure impeachment moment because the prosecution essentially gave the witnesses the answer key before the test. Judge Bev admitted the Lank meeting was a total surprise to her too. Apparently, the only people not in the loop were the ones wearing robes. The defense then called out a prep session involving Lieutenant Tully and the DA's office that was never disclosed. Lally claimed it wasn't a formal interview. Jen just wanted to re-review her grand jury testimony, and he had Tully monitor her. Jackson found it unfathomable that Tully, a veteran investigator, heard new info about Jen meeting Proctor's wife and didn't ask a single follow-up. Bev's solution? You'll get to cross-examine Tully later. In this trial, later is the promised land where all questions are supposedly answered. Finally, they previewed the upcoming Sullivan sisters' testimony regarding a disastrous trip to Aruba. Yannetti argued that bringing up a vacation fight is just a way to make Karen look like a bad person. Bev is, of course, letting it in. She's already decided the jury will ignore the bad character vibes and only use it to understand motive. And she's convinced they'll follow her instructions because they nodded when she gave them earlier. So the jury is about to hear all about John O'Keefe's state of mind regarding Karen, provided we can infer she knew he was annoyed with her. It's a lot of legal gymnastics to justify a relationship autopsy on the witness stand. The defense feels like they're playing a game where the prosecution sees their cards, and the judge is fast-tracking a bad acts narrative about Aruba to keep the prosecution's motive alive. Meanwhile, Lally is getting ready to call Kerry Roberts, who the defense promises will be a shorter ride than the Jen McCabe roller coaster. Move over, Jennifer McCabe. There's a new it girl in the prosecution's lineup. Commonwealth witness 40, Kerry Roberts, executive assistant and longtime friend of John O'Keefe, took the stand to provide a masterclass in I remember it like it was yesterday, even if yesterday was a blizzard in 2022. Kerry established her credentials by explaining she's known John since high school, back when a bad night just meant losing a football game, not finding a body on a lawn. She's basically the O'Keefe family's unofficial social worker, helping John raise his niece and nephew after a series of family tragedies. Kerry first met Karen Reed in July 2020, but don't call them besties. They didn't do lunch, they just coordinated the kids' schedules, like two divorced parents who haven't quite mastered the shared Google Calendar yet. Kerry's morning on the 29th started with the kind of alarm clock no one wants. Karen Reed screaming through the phone. According to Kerry, Karen called at 5 a.m. sharp and led with "John's dead, Kerry, Kerry, Kerry," before hanging up. Talk about a conversation starter. When Karen called back 5 minutes later, the narrative had already shifted. "I'm afraid John might be dead. He might have gotten hit by a plow." She also added the classic "I don't remember anything from last night" defense, despite apparently having enough memory to navigate the snowy streets of Canton. Kerry, acting as the adult in the room, told Karen to go home and be with John's niece while she went out into a blizzard to play private investigator. Kerry met Karen and Jen McCabe at Jen's house. While sitting in the driveway, Kerry noticed the right rear passenger taillight of Karen's Lexus. Kerry described it as a little black hole where a piece was missing, though it was caked in snow. Karen, ever the subtle one, allegedly asked, "Do you think I hit him? Do you think I hit him?" Kerry's response was a polite way of saying, "I don't know, but let's focus on the guy who's missing." The trio eventually ended up at John's house on Meadows Ave, which Kerry described as the lair of a neat freak, where you strictly do not wear shoes. While Kerry looked for John behind the couches, like he was a lost TV remote, she found Karen standing in John's bedroom. The bed was perfectly made, clear evidence that John never slept in it, and that the O'Keefe household was far more organized than the investigation into his death. Kerry also noted that the right garage door wouldn't close when they tried to leave, a mechanical failure that matches the general vibe of the morning. Just as Lally was getting comfortable with his Ring video slideshow, he dropped the bombshell that he had CSI-style enhancements ready to go. The defense moved to Sidebar immediately, number 142. The only problem? The defense claimed they never got the memo, or more accurately, the link at the bottom of the email. Lally explained that the new exhibits were zoomed-in, enhanced still shots, and a video derived from the original Ring footage. Defense attorney Little claimed she hadn't seen the video version yet. Lally hit back with the ultimate IT guy response. "It's in the link. Just click on the link." At the bottom of the email. It's a classic trial move. Bury potentially incriminating digital evidence in a hyperlink at the bottom of an email. And then act surprised when the defense hasn't spent their evening clicking through every folder. There was a brief, awkward realization that Kerry Roberts, an executive assistant, not a forensic video analyst, probably isn't the person to explain how a zoomed and enhanced video was created. Lally admitted he'll eventually call a witness who actually knows how pixels work, but for now, he just wanted to get the pretty pictures in front of the jury. Lally is essentially trying to show the jury the director's cut of the Ring video, before he's even explained who the cameraman was. Judge Bev, ever the fan of efficiency, briefly considered sending the jury out so the lawyers could have a private screening. Lally agreed to move on to other questions, giving the defense the entire lunch hour to find that missing link and see what Lally's experts have been up to. The enhanced reveal is on ice, at least until after sandwiches. The defense gets a working lunch, the jury gets a break, and Lally gets a few more hours to hope his link actually works. Kerry Roberts continued her testimony detailing the transition from concerned friend to blizzard-battling investigator. If you thought the driveway drama at Jen's was peak chaos, the trip to 34 Fairview was where the wheels, and the taillights, really started to come off. Before hitting the road, Kerry led a frantic search through John's house, which apparently doubled as a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek. Kerry checked behind the couches and in the basement, while Jen and Karen headed upstairs. Kerry found Karen standing in John's room, staring at a bed that was perfectly made. After a quick look in the computer room and bathrooms, Kerry called it. John wasn't there, and he definitely hadn't slept there. As they prepared to leave, the broken Lexus taillight became the center of the universe. Karen allegedly pointed out the damage and asked, "Do you think I hit him? Do you think I hit him?" Kerry, clearly more focused on the missing human than the car parts, told her, "No, I don't think you hit him. I think you probably hit something," and urged them to keep moving. Kerry confirmed that the photos shown in court, metal piece sticking out and all, were consistent with what she saw, minus the caked snow from the blizzard. With Kerry taking the lead in her Ford Explorer, the trio braved the worsening conditions to head to the last place John was seen, the Albert residence. Jen drove Karen's Lexus, while Kerry followed behind, a two-car caravan through a whiteout. Throughout the drive, Karen remained very frantic and elevated, a mood Kerry noted didn't change for the rest of the day. Just as Lally was ready to debut his high-definition, zoomed-in, Sundance-ready version of the Ring video, the defense reminded everyone that fair is fair. And in this courtroom, fair means nobody gets to use their cool video editing tricks unless everyone does. Welcome to Sidebar 143. Lally tried to sneak in an enhanced video at the end of Kerry's direct, but defense attorney Little was ready with receipts. She pointed out that the defense was blocked from playing their own enhanced masterpieces earlier in the trial. If the defense can't use their filter-heavy edits, Lally shouldn't be allowed to play James Cameron with the evidence either. It's a classic. If I can't have shiny toys, you can't either. Playground defense. But with much higher stakes and more expensive lawyers. Judge Bev, clearly not a fan of sitting through a feature-length film of a driveway, was horrified at the suggestion of a 6-minute version. Lally scrambled to promise he didn't want to subject everyone to a 6-minute epic. He wants the good parts, the parts that look like a broken taillight. She asked if this was just the digital equivalent of putting a magnifying glass over a photo, a tech analogy that roughly matches the I leave my tabs open level of digital literacy we've seen so far. Since the lunch hour apparently didn't provide enough time for the defense to find Lally's missing link, Judge Bev decided she'll be spending her evening with a bowl of popcorn and the ring footage. She'll review the enhanced video tonight. If it passes her personal Rotten Tomatoes test, she'll let Lally admit it tomorrow, without even needing a witness to explain it. Bev is taking her work home with her, which means the Ring Video Enhanced Edition won't be hitting theaters until tomorrow morning's session. Everyone was bracing for a multi-hour cross-examination involving GPS coordinates, babysitter drama, and more Blizzard-related forensics. The air completely went out the room. Lally took his customary dramatic pause to check his notes one last time, presumably to ensure he hadn't forgotten to ask Kerry about any other household appliances or snow shoveling techniques, before declaring he was finally done. In a move that probably gave the court reporter a heart attack from pure shock, defense attorney Little simply said, "No questions." After all the buildup about Kerry being the adult in the room and her 45-minute talker sessions in the back of Mike Lank's car, the defense decided that her testimony was so something that it didn't even require a single follow-up. They let her walk off the stand without a scratch, leaving the I love it group texts and the neat freak house tour hanging in the air like a Canton fog. Commonwealth Witness 41, Laura Sullivan, a human resources professional from Pembroke, who apparently spends her vacation time managing the logistics of 60 people in Aruba. If the previous witnesses were the Canton insiders, Laura is the emotional anchor to John O'Keefe's past, and the bearer of some very expensive tropical tea. Laura didn't just know John. She shared a history with him that sounds like a Southie version of a Nicholas Sparks novel. Laura met John in 2013 through his best friend Pat Rogers. After Pat tragically committed suicide while Laura was pregnant, John never left her side. John became the godfather to Laura's son. In her family, he was literally referred to as the Godfather. He was the connection to a lost friend, and a constant in their lives for nearly a decade. Fast forward to 2021, Laura is organizing a massive group to Aruba. John reaches out because he wants in, and he's not coming alone. This was Laura's first time meeting Karen Reed, who initially appeared as a voice in the background of a phone call. Karen apparently wasn't interested in the one big happy family suite. She informed Laura she needed her own bathroom and her own space, leading to the couple booking 2 separate rooms on opposite sides of the resort. John and Karen on one side, and the kids on the other. The group arrived in Aruba on December 30th. Laura's first visual of Karen Reed wasn't a handshake in the lobby. It was a woman banging on the window of a hotel room. Once Karen emerged, she was all hugs and "I've heard so much about you." The night of the 30th was Laura's boyfriend's birthday, so the adults headed out to a restaurant called the Screaming Eagle. They're sitting on a patio, enjoying the tropical breeze and ordering drinks. Laura's boyfriend Josh ordered a dirty martini with blue cheese stuffed olives. We've officially transitioned from the snowy streets of Canton to a high-end restaurant in Aruba. Why are we talking about blue cheese stuffed olives? Because in this trial, a drink order is never just a drink order. It's the fuse for bad axe explosions. While the jury is likely wondering if blue cheese olives were the key to the Commonwealth's case, the lawyers are at Sidebar 144, arguing over whether Karen Reed's vacation bar tab is the smoking gun or just a Tuesday. Lally's big reveal? At dinner on December 30th, Karen allegedly ordered 2 drinks at the same time. Lally wants the jury to know that Karen drank heavily and that this double fisting was her baseline. He's trying to normalize her drinking habits to set the stage for the OUI charges. Oh wait, they never charged her with that. Basically, if she drinks 2 at a time in Aruba, she's definitely the type to do it in Canton. Lally isn't cherry picking, he's just picking the cherries out of 2 martinis instead of 1. He even threw in a she picked up the tab as a sweetener, because apparently generosity is now a gateway to motor vehicle homicide. Yannetti wasn't having it. He slammed the testimony as anecdotal evidence and propensity evidence. You can't just take one night in the Caribbean and say it typifies a person's entire life. Ordering 2 drinks on vacation doesn't prove she was intoxicated a month later. Lally tried to link the booze to her state of mind for the upcoming drama with Laura's sister, but Yannetti pointed out that the 30th and the 31st are separate days, even in Aruba. Judge Bev decided to play bartender and cut Lally off, for now. She's not letting the 2 drinks at once testimony in. She noted that if Lally wants to talk about tolerance and normalcy later, perhaps when the experts testify, or when they bring up Karen's interview with Boston Magazine, he can try again. Bev essentially told Lally to put the martinis on a back burner. If the defense challenges her tolerance later, Lally can bring up the Aruba party girl narrative. But for today, the Screaming Eagle bar tab is off the record. Laura Sullivan's trip to paradise quickly turned into a Real Housewives episode, complete with high-stakes dinner bills, accusations of tropical infidelity, and a very confused Boston police officer. The Aruba trip kicked off with a dinner at the Screaming Eagle, where Karen Reed pulled the ultimate power move. Before the bill even hit the table, Karen had already paid for the entire group of adults. When the table offered to Venmo her, because HR people love a good reimbursement, Karen declined, stating she was honored to be there with John's chosen family. It's a classic move. Buy the dinner, buy the loyalty. Little did she know she was about to buy a whole lot of drama instead. New Year's Eve arrived, and while most people were focused on fireworks, Karen was focused on John's proximity to Laura's younger sister, Marietta, also known as Etta. Laura found Etta at the pool bar, visibly upset and frustrated. At this point, Judge Bev paused to give the jury a very long, "This isn't proof she's a bad person" speech, which is the judicial way of saying, listen to this gossip, but pretend it doesn't make you hate her. John eventually emerged at the pool bar looking less like a man on vacation and more like a man being hunted. Laura asked John if Etta and Karen had words. John tried the classic "I don't know" defense, but his phone was lighting up with a barrage of texts and calls from Karen. When Laura asked if he needed to take the call, John already sighed and said, "Yes, she's crazy. I've got to take this." Nothing says Happy New Year like describing your significant other as crazy to your friends, while your phone vibrates into the next dimension. The drama peaked on January 2nd at the private island cabanas. John sent Laura a text that probably ruined her tan. "Apparently, I made out with your sister the other night," according to Karen. Laura was shocked. Etta's boyfriend was on the trip. Etta denied it. And the whole 60-person group was now embroiled in a he said, she said over a kiss that seemingly may have never happened. A few days later, Karen attempted a peace treaty, outside a marketplace arcade. Karen grabbed Laura and said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I thought I saw something that I didn't." Karen offered to pay for the part of Etta's hotel room as a "sorry, I accused you of hooking up with my boyfriend" consolation prize. Laura declined, saying a simple apology would suffice, because in HR we prefer verbal resolutions over unsolicited room credits. The testimony ended with the tragic news of January 29th. when Laura texted Karen to ask what happened. Karen's response was a bit different from the "I hit him" confession Lally has been chasing. Karen texted, "I don't know. We were both at the same party. I didn't go in. I went home." When the jury thought they were settled in for an HR-style deep dive into Karen's character, David Yannetti stepped up and delivered a cross-examination so brief it barely qualified as a conversation. Yannetti quickly established that for all her talk of godchildren and Aruba martinis, Laura Sullivan was nowhere near the Waterfall Bar on the night of the 28th, nor was she on the snow-covered lawn of 34 Fairview the morning of the 29th. He then dropped the real nugget. Despite Laura being a total non-witness to the actual events, Trooper Michael Proctor, the lead investigator who apparently had plenty of time for field trips, drove all the way to Pembroke on February 8th just to interview her. But he left other witnesses for nearly 2 years. Yannetti's point was subtle but pointed. Why was the state police's lead investigator spending his time driving to the South Shore to get vacation gossip about a crazy girlfriend while the actual evidence in Canton was still chilling? Yannetti didn't even give her a chance to explain the commute. He confirmed the visit, said nothing further, and sat down, leaving the jury to wonder why Proctor was so obsessed with the Aruba incident less than 2 weeks after John's death. Also, how did he find out? Just a question. Lally, sensing that Yannetti's Proctor went on a solo mission to Gossipville narrative was landing a little too closely, stood up for one final, extremely meaningful question. He clarified that Trooper Proctor didn't just wander into Pembroke alone to chat about Aruba. He brought a friend. Trooper Fanning was there to witness the high-stakes HR debriefing. Oh, well, in that case, clearly it wasn't a weird targeted fishing expedition if there were 2 state troopers taking up space in Laura's living room to discuss a year-old vacation spat. With the world-shaking revelation that Proctor had a ride-along buddy, Lally rested. Laura Sullivan was finally released from the stand, likely heading back to Pembroke to update her own godmother files. Just as the court prepared to welcome the second half of the Sullivan sisters, the lawyers huddled for Sidebar 145, which was equal parts legal strategy and travel planning. Yannetti is officially over the godmother origin story. He argued that the jury doesn't need to hear the 2013 backstory for the second time today, calling it too attenuated and irrelevant. Yannetti essentially asked for a mute button on the background noise so he wouldn't have to keep standing up to object to the same tragic biography. Bev told him to keep getting his steps in by objecting question by question, but promised to keep Lally on a short leash regarding the depth of the relationship. Since Marietta is the actual sister involved in the supposed Aruba lobby scandal, the bad acts jury instruction is back by popular demand. While Yannetti worried the jury was sick of hearing the same legal disclaimer, Jackson and the judge agreed that with this witness, the one who was supposedly at the center of the crazy accusations, the instruction is more necessary than ever. It's the courtroom version of a viewer discretion advised warning before the main event. In a shocking twist for a trial that usually moves at the speed of a sloth, Lally admitted he's actually out of witnesses for the day after Marietta. Brian Higgins, of the ATF and Albert's Bestie fame, is the next man up, but he wasn't even in the building yet. Lally didn't think they'd get to him. Bev noted this is the first time in history they've actually run through a witness list early. Apparently, the Sullivan sprint caught everyone off guard. Alan Jackson took a moment to be a little personal, letting the court know he'd like to stay in LA an extra day next week to see his partner. He'll only skip Tuesday if the prosecution isn't calling the big fish, Michael Proctor or Brian Higgins. Lally thinks he can finish Higgins' direct on Friday, in about 90 minutes. Jackson, never one to undersell a performance, promised a pippier cross-examination, about 3 to 4 hours. So if Friday goes according to plan, Higgins will be thoroughly grilled and Jackson can enjoy a long weekend in California without missing the Proctor fireworks. Commonwealth Witness 42, Marietta Sullivan. The younger Sullivan sister took the stand to recount the 5-minute interaction that apparently convinced Karen Reed she was living in a soap opera. If Laura was the logistician, Marietta was the target of the tropical F-bomb. Marietta established her Johnny credentials early. To her, John O'Keefe was more than a family friend. He was the guy who stepped up when her nephew's father died. She described him as a big brother figure and the godfather. When she first saw him on the 31st, he was living his best life in an Alabama hat, looking forward to nothing more than a football game and a tropical drink. After a New Year's Eve dinner that John skipped, Marietta ran into him in the Renaissance lobby. It wasn't exactly a scene from The Love Boat. Marietta testified that John stumbled into the lobby, looking glassy-eyed. Her first reaction was a concerned, "Whoa, Godfather, are you okay?" She gave him a hug, but noted he wouldn't make eye contact and seemed to be looking over her shoulder for someone. She guided him toward his room and started to walk away. And this is where the bad acts really kicked in. As Marietta headed for the pool bar, the tropical silence was shattered. Marietta heard her name screamed angrily across the lobby. She heard a voice yell, "Who the F was that?" John, playing the role of exhausted peacemaker, told Karen, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister." Trying to be polite, Marietta turned around and said, "Hi, nice to meet you." Karen Reed's head allegedly snapped up, and she energetically told Marietta to go F herself in front of the lobby staff. Marietta, not the HR professional, replied, "Yeah, F you too," and made her exit. Marietta didn't go to the police. She went to the pool bar for a vibe check with her sister. She walked up to Laura and asked John O'Keefe's girlfriend, "You guys like her?" When Laura gave a lukewarm "she's okay," Marietta delivered the final verdict. Well, she sucks. On January 2nd, the Cabana Day finally arrived, but the tension was thicker than the sunscreen. John and Karen's cabana sat empty for half the day. When they finally showed up, Marietta saw them from a distance but stayed far, far away. There was no apology tour for her, just the lingering memory of a New Year's Eve greeting gone wrong. The lawyers huddled again in Sidebar 146 to figure out how many layers of he said, she said they could legally shove into Marietta's testimony, before the whole thing collapsed under the weight of its own gossip. Yannetti immediately flagged the next line of questioning as rank hearsay. Translation: we are now hearing what Marietta told Laura about what John told Laura about what Karen allegedly said. It's essentially a game of telephone, played at a high-end resort. Lally countered with every prosecutor's favorite magic trick. It's not for the truth of the matter. He argued he wasn't trying to prove John and Marietta actually made out, mostly because everyone agrees they didn't. He just wanted to show the effect of Karen's supposed accusation on the group's state of mind. We've reached peak trial absurdity, when the prosecution is fighting to admit a story about a kiss that never happened, just to prove the defendant has a jealous state of mind. Judge Bev decided that instead of reciting her 3-page state of mind poem for the 5th time, she'd just give the jury a "hey, remember that thing I said earlier" nudge. The gossip is in. The jury is about to hear the official denial of the makeout session that existed only in the land of he said, she said. The day concluded with Marietta Sullivan's final word on the Caribbean's most awkward game of telephone. After a brief commercial break for Judge Bev's State of Mind remix, we finally got to the bottom of the Cabana crisis. Under Lally's guidance, Marietta recounted the moment her sister pulled her aside to ask the burning question, "Were you making out with the Godfather?" Marietta's response was a resounding "absolutely not," followed by the legal equivalent of "ew, he's like my brother." Marietta noted that for the rest of the trip, John was effectively MIA from the family festivities. She testified this wasn't the Johnny she knew. The man who was usually the life of the party was now essentially in witness protection within his own vacation, presumably to avoid another lobby-snapping incident. That chilly silence lasted until they left the island. Marietta never saw John again, leaving her last memory of him as a man stumbling through a lobby being yelled at by a woman in a checkered blazer. While Laura came to court to discuss logistics and HR policies, Marietta arrived with a much clearer agenda: to officially label Karen as the villain of Aruba. She wasn't just there to answer questions. She was there to deliver a character assassination with the precision of a memory care director. With her "whoa, Godfather" concern to her perfectly timed "she sucks" exit line. Marietta seemed determined to ensure the jury knew that Karen Reed didn't just break a taillight. She also broke the vibe. She leaned into the Big Brother narrative so hard you'd think they shared a DNA test. All to make Karen's alleged jealousy look not just misplaced, but practically delusional. Marietta didn't just want to testify. She wanted to make sure the record reflected that she was the cool, concerned younger sister, and Karen was the energetic lobby screamer who ruined a perfectly good Alabama game. Just when Marietta was getting comfortable in her role as the truth teller of the tropics, David Yannetti stepped up and delivered a cross-examination so short it could have been a text message. Yannetti quickly established that Marietta was nowhere near the Waterfall Bar, and certainly wasn't lounging on the lawn of 34 Fairview. In fact, she had exactly zero first-hand knowledge of the night John O'Keefe actually died. Then came the zinger. Yannetti confirmed that despite her having absolutely no connection to the crime scene, lead investigator, gossip collector, Michael Proctor, drove all the way to Pembroke just 10 days after the incident to get the scoop on Marietta's hurt feelings from a month prior. Yannetti's agenda was clearer than the water in Aruba. He wanted the jury to see that the state police was more interested in building a Karen is a mean girl narrative than actually investigating a forensic crime scene. He basically told the jury, "Thanks for the vacation slides, but why was the lead detective treating a 2021 lobby spat like a triple homicide?" Yannetti didn't ask about the "go F yourself" or the glassy eyes. He just highlighted the trooper's bizarre priorities, and said nothing further, and sat down, leaving the villain of Aruba narrative hanging in the air like a cheap hotel air freshener. Lally, desperately trying to make the trooper's road trip to Pembroke look like a productive use of taxpayer money rather than a gossip-gathering mission, stood up for one final round of damage control. Lally confirmed that Proctor didn't come alone. He had a partner. Marietta couldn't remember the guy's name. Sorry, Trooper Nobody. But she was sure there were two of them, because I guess it takes two state troopers to handle the emotional weight of a New Year's Eve snub. We learned that Proctor ran a regular assembly line in the Sullivan basement. He interviewed Laura first, while Marietta hid in her basement bedroom like a teenager avoiding chores. Then they swapped places. Marietta talked to the cops while Laura escaped the house to pick up her nephew. It's a classic divide-and-conquer strategy, usually reserved for actual criminals, but here used to ensure the sisters didn't collaborate on their stories about who told whom to go F themselves. See, they can do real-ish police work with the Sullivan sisters, but I guess they can't with the McAlberts. Lally's big win? Proving that Marietta couldn't hear Laura's interview through the floorboards. Truly, the forensic breakthrough we were all waiting for. With the Sullivan sisters safely ushered out of the building, Judge Bev did something unprecedented. She let everyone out early. For the first time in history, Lally ran out of people to put on the stand. Maybe the Aruba stories were so energetic they finished ahead of schedule. The stage is now set for Friday's main event. Brian Higgins. Judge Bev is practically begging the lawyers to finish him in one day, for all sorts of reasons. Read, she really wants her weekend. Alan Jackson promised a hopeful and pippy cross-examination, while Lally promised he'd get backup witnesses waiting in the wings just in case they actually maintain this lightning pace. The jury was sent home with the usual "don't look at the internet" warning, while the rest of us are left wondering if Brian Higgins is currently at home practicing his answers or deleting his group chat history. The Sullivans are gone. The Aruba travel log is closed, and we have a whole day off to process the fact that the Godfather liked Alabama football. See you soon for the ATF vs. the defense. Bring your own popcorn. Just as the lights were about to go down on the Sullivan sisters' vacation slideshow, The lawyers met one last time in Sidebar 147 to figure out how to make Brian Higgins' digital life legible for a jury that has already suffered enough. Judge Bev, apparently ready to start her evening of being a film critic, reminded Lally that she still needs the enhanced video of Karen's Lexus. Lally confirmed he has a physical disc. How vintage. Ready for the clerk. This is the video Bev promised to watch at home to see if Lally gets to play the CSI Canton for the jury on Friday. Lally finally admitted what everyone who has seen a police report already knows. Raw cell phone data downloads are a nightmare to read. Lally wants to use a chalk, a simplified, readable version, for Brian Higgins' texts. He's specifically looking to highlight the two big categories: Higgins talking to John and Higgins talking to Karen. Everything else is getting the digital scissors. Lally is essentially asking to provide the jury with the cliff notes of the Higgins-Reed flirtation communication, because the actual data is apparently too ridiculous for human eyes. It's the ultimate HR move. Here's a summary because the raw data is a mess. In a rare display of cooperation that probably made the court reporter faint, the defense didn't immediately scream objection. Alan Jackson is cool with the summary, provided he gets to fact-check it against the original data. Trust but verify is the motto, especially when dealing with Lally's edits. When Yannetti suggested they might reach an agreement, Judge Bev couldn't resist a zinger. Easy for you to say, you're not examining that witness, right? Even the judge knows that when Jackson gets hold of Higgins on Friday, easy is not the word anyone will be using. The court is adjourned for Tuesday, but the table is set for a full day Friday. Lally will email the readable texts to everyone, Bev will watch her DVD, and the lawyers will spend their day off trying to come to an agreement. A task Bev clearly thinks is as unlikely as a heat wave in Canton. As the gavel fell on day 16, the court was left in a state of trust but verify limbo, with Adam Lally scurrying off to email a sanitized, readable version of Brian Higgins' digital love letters to the defense, while the prosecution spent the afternoon trying to edit the Higgins-Reed flirtation down to a manageable HR summary. Judge Bev made it clear she isn't holding her breath for a peaceful resolution, noting that an agreement between these two teams is about as likely as a Hail Mary pass returned for a pick six. The table is now set for a full day Friday that promises to be anything but easy. With 12 mystery phone calls burning a hole in Alan Jackson's pocket and the raw data of a federal agent's phone waiting to be dissected, the weekend can't come soon enough for the Commonwealth. Lally might be hoping for a clean Cliff Notes presentation, but with Jackson ready to take the wheel, we're all expecting a marathon cross-examination that will make the raw data look like a light beach read. Grab your coffee, folks. Friday is coming, and Easy just left the building. Well, that's all we have. So as always, love your family, love your pets, love your neighbors, and we'll see you next time.
Of doubt, wheels of fate turning, can't figure it out. Hands are heavy, hearts are stone. This weight I carry, can't do it alone. Eyes of the crowd running through my skin, their whispers loud, where do I begin? One road to mercy, one road to pain. Every choice here leaves a blood stain. Bang, 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 bang. As the virtual juror, what do I choose? Every step forward, there's something to lose. Voices screaming, justice chains, battling fate. What's the price for the call I make? Every heartbeat's a ticking bomb. The line between right and wrong is gone. Buried deep in the noise of the fight. Is there a way to make this right? Echoes of their pleas fill the air. Shattered dreams scattered everywhere. The gavel falls like thunder crashing. Can't stop the tide that keeps on smashing. As the virtual juror, what do I choose?